What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening to Your Ex-Drinking Buddy. My name is Brennan Tassif. I'll be your host. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Check out the merch store at brennantcomedy.com/merch-store. And make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well. We'll put the shorts up there, the full video, the whole thing. Thank you so much for listening. I love it. I hope you love it. Subscribe on Patreon, too. We do bonus episodes. I do Tales from the Restaurant, where I talk about celebrities I've waited on and whether they're assholes or not, which is super fun. Also, we do a pre-show banter for my other show, Cheers from the Press Box with Joe Dorville. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff going on over there, too. Make sure you just subscribe everywhere, just all over the place. I greatly appreciate it. And if you're not leaving the mean comments, thank you for that. Maybe leave a couple nice ones.
Grab me your beer and grab him a coke. We bout to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brennan T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I am your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It was my favorite thing to do, hang out with friends, get drunk, do drugs, get in all sorts of trouble, and then reminisce about those crazy stories. I am sober now, but it's still one of my favorite things to do, hang out with somebody and reminisce about the crazy old days. Most weeks I'll be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. All the way from New York City, Dillon Krause. What's up, man?
Not much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It's a little intense. I know the intro can be a little crazy.
I don't know what you just... Like the last 30 seconds, I don't know what you said. But
it's so funny because
rehearsed.
we're always just talking before
yeah.
we start. I start the whole thing.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Yeah, man, this is so cool." And then I always go like, "What's up?" And they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa."
Well, also like you forget that when you're on, you just forget that you have like an intro. And then
it's like a show.
Yeah,
it's like a whole thing going on.
Exactly. Yeah. Sounded good though.
Before we get too far into anything, plug everything up front. Social media. This will come out in about 2 weeks. So any dates you have coming up, anything like that, let everyone know where they can find you.
At Dillon Krause _ on Instagram, and I'm on YouTube somewhere. It's basically my name. I don't know. I didn't prepare any plugs whatsoever. So go to Instagram. Everything's on my Instagram.
Okay. And we were actually talking about this before. The posting.
Oh, God, yeah.
How miserable it is.
Well, I'm also just like starting to post.
Yeah.
Which I'm hoping is the worst part. I'm hoping it gets more. I mean, I don't know.
It gets better, but it gets better. It's all like within context. So it's like, I remember when videos would get like no views, but then you start getting some views. And the listeners know this. I know you know this from experience. But when I say some views, I mean like 50 to 100. And then you'll start getting like 100 to 200. Then you'll start getting like 500 to 1,000.
Sure.
And now a lot of my clips that I put up get regularly over 1,000 to a few thousand. And I'm like, oh, I'm in that. But it's all the fucking same. Like I still have the same feeling when a video only gets a few thousand versus the same feeling I had when it only got like 30.
Right.
It's still like, well, this isn't where I want it to be.
But that my problem with it all is what it's doing to me. Like it's not like
Talk about it. What's going on?
Well, it's fine. It's like we said, it's part of the job, I guess. But
you just got to do it.
Like I posted something yesterday, and it's probably at like 2,000 views or something. And but like, dude, all right. So have you heard about this? Apparently, Instagram does basically what heroin does in terms of making your first thing the best, and then you're chasing that first thing. So my first
TikTok was really known for this during the pandemic.
Okay,
because they would blow people up.
Right,
like,
and then you are like,
like Instagram will give you a few thousand. Like I've had a couple on Instagram that like I have one or two that have gone over 1 million.
Right,
and those aren't mine. Those are ones I'm just a collaborator on. And then a lot of it is like a few thousand. But TikTok during the pandemic would give you millions of views, and that's why people were like obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Because they were like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
I just became famous.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened for you?
Well, no, I had like, I don't know, maybe 15K or something on my first clip.
Oh, and you were like, let's, daddy's home. Here we go.
I mean, I didn't really think that much of it because I previously posted some like quick sketch with a friend of mine, and it got something like 17 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I like didn't think much of it, and then it's been lower, and like the past few clips, it's been maybe about, I feel like I wonder what the layperson thinks about comics talking about clips.
They probably are like, this is fucking stupid.
But
especially the people who like don't have social media like at all, or have it just to keep track of their friends and family.
Yeah.
They're like, who the fuck cares? Like, stop putting your lives on the internet.
Right. But so like the last few have been like 2 to 3K. And as a joke, I wanted to like screenshot those view numbers and post it to my story, being like, life is meaningless. But like, and I'm kidding. But the fact that there's a little bit of truth in every joke, and the fact that that joke even crossed my mind makes me sick. That my mind is even going there as a like. Because I hadn't been doing it forever, because I knew that this is what it does to you.
This is, it eats your soul. But the weird thing, this will really start to trip you out when you post on multiple platforms, and on one platform it gets thousands of views. Yeah. And on another platform it gets like maybe 50. And you're like, I don't understand. I posted the same time with the same hashtags, with the same everything. Yeah. And then there's certain things that, like we were talking about before, I've had guests on where they like just let it rip, which I love. But then I try to post it, and Instagram's like, no one's seeing this, man. You can't fucking, we're not having this. Yeah. And then it just gets buried. But talking about all the comedy shit and how fucking lame it can be. How long have you been in New York?
I've been in New York for 13 years.
13 years?
But I haven't been doing comedy the whole time.
No, What brought you to New York? Where are you from originally?
I'm from Long Island.
Oh, okay.
It was just kind of the place.
So you kind of like grew up here? In the region.
Not in the city, but yeah.
Yeah.
In tri-state area.
Okay. Yeah. And then what drove you to move to New York City? Is that a thing? I'm not from here.
No, it's just what everyone, well, not everyone. Anyone who just kind of is following the herd, like I had, you just moved. It's the closest city, and it's the city that, like, a ton of people want to go to. So it's just the natural progression. After you graduate college, you get a job, and that's just kind of at least the way I was raised / just the way I am. You're like, all right, the next step is you get a job in New York City and live there.
Okay.
So,
because to me, the reason I bring it up is it's fascinating to me, because I grew up in Florida. I was raised in Florida, spent my entire life in Florida. So we have that to an extent. Like, people will move to Orlando or to Miami or to Tampa or to Jacksonville, like the bigger cities. But I had always been like, I've always loved New York from afar. Like, I came one time when I was 14, but I remember when I would watch Comedy Central or something like that when I was like a kid, like 12 or 13 years old, I'd be like, oh, that's the place to be, is like New York City. Yeah. And I would have dreams, like lucid dreams, about like being on the subway and like seeing the skyline from like the train and stuff. And I'd be like, one day I'm going to live there.
That's great, yeah.
But to me, it's like a pipe dream. But growing up in Long Island, you're like, yeah, that's what we all fucking move here.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, not that you're born where you're born and you can't help it, but like, I hearing somebody like that who's just like, I dream. It's almost like being born in America, where like people like spend their whole lives
risk everything to get here.
Everything, get on a fucking float, and like just hope that they make it.
Yeah,
and then we're just like wake up and we're in America like from day one.
And then so many of those people are like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And it's like, people are risking their lives to get here. So, how old are you?
36.
Okay, because I always thought you were much younger than I was, but we're actually the same age.
Oh, you're 36?
Yeah. But you come across way younger. You're just so much cooler than I am. So when did you start doing stand-up?
2000 and hold on, let me think about this. Really, the beginning of 2018 is when I wholeheartedly started.
Yeah.
I did a few mics throughout 2017.
Look at us. Yeah. We're on the same timeline.
Same thing? Nice.
So I started in 2009. But drugs, alcohol, jail, hospitals, rehabs. I basically would like do a couple mics and then take like 3 months off, and then do a couple mics and take like 6 months off, get booked on like a show, and then take the longest amount of time I took was 3 years. But it was funny, when I moved to New York, I wanted that like street credit. Yeah. So I was telling everybody, I started comedy in 2009. And it took 3 years, because I've now been in New York for 3 years. It took 3 years until someone finally was like, hey, man, you really didn't start until you got sober in 2018. Yeah. Maybe you tell people 6 years, because that sounds way better for your career where it's at versus saying you've been doing it for 16 years. And I was like, oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So, 2018 is kind of where I jumped in full force.
Gotcha. And was drinking related to was there any relationship between the two for you?
Yeah. So when I first started doing stand up, my first open mic in South Florida, I was hammered, and I just thought like, oh, you have to get on stage hammered. But I was I was always, it kind of all coincided with each other where like I love stand up since I was 12, but I was like, I could never do that. Then I saw Dane Cook and I was like, oh, that looks like fun. Like I want to do that. Like when he was ripping his shirt off and stuff.
Yeah.
But then I just never tried it. I did the football route. I went to college to play football. And then when football was taken from me when I got my 8th concussion and they're like, you can't play anymore, I got really heavy into drugs and alcohol. And I was like, well, let me start this comedy thing. Let me try this.
Right.
So it all kind of like blended together.
Right.
And so when I came back in 2018, I had to, like, I still had some bits that were usable. Like, I still had that stage presence because I've always been that kind of guy.
Yeah.
But I had to relearn how to do stand-up sober.
Oh,
because
sure, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, like, really weird. For you, because comedy is such a niche thing, when did you even, like, discover stand-up? Not, like, when did you start, when did you get, but, like, what led you to being like, oh, this is a cool thing?
For me doing stand-up, my first introduction to probably any stand-up was when I was like a kid.
Yeah.
My parents had like Seinfeld.
So
tape.
you're okay. Every guest always like brushes over, but that's a thing.
It was the first like this is stand-up comedy. We're listening to it in the car.
So many people would never even know, like, see it. Like my girlfriend Tracy is a like civilian. She's a school teacher. All her friends are school teachers.
Right.
You'd be shocked how many like regular people I meet that aren't in the arts at all who have no idea what the concept is. And they have an idea of what the concept is, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they've never been to a show. Like, something will happen, and I'll be like, oh, that's a bit. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, they don't get stand-up.
Yeah, totally.
So I always love asking people that because it is such a niche thing. And it's like, so you watched Seinfeld as a kid.
Well, I wasn't allowed to watch Seinfeld as a kid.
Really?
Yeah. My parents were very, like, no cursing, no, like, very proper, you're going to get married a virgin type of family.
Was it a religious basis or was it more like just a strict, this is how we raise you in this household kind of a thing?
I think it was a mixture. We were both of my parents were raised Catholic, and there was an element of that. We went to Catholic school growing up.
Oh, okay.
And there was definitely like a religious component, but it was also just kind of where they came from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In terms of like
for
propriety and like, we don't talk about X, Y, and Z type of things.
Yeah.
But that said, like now especially, and pretty quickly, the reins were loosened and we kind of will still, it's way more like collegial, if you will, in my house. But growing up for sure, it was like, so Seinfeld was
that's nuts because
the show we couldn't watch.
That's crazy.
Like think about the contest for like a 10-year-old kid.
I totally understand the idea.
Yeah.
My dad was obsessed with that show, and so we would all watch it together. But I totally get that because my high school sweetheart, her family was like super conservative and very religious.
Yeah.
And I remember we were all sitting on their couch one day so we were both in high school. I drove her home because I was a little bit older. You know how it is, that whole like older boy dating the younger girl in high school, which sounds weird saying as a 36-year-old. I drove her home and we're all sitting on the couch and Seinfeld, and like we're just flicking through the channels and Seinfeld was on. I was like, like I've been watching this show since I could remember. It came out when I was like 8 years old. I was like, we have to watch this.
Yeah.
And sitting there with her parents, and every joke, they were like, ugh.
Yeah.
This is terrible. And I was like, oh boy.
And he was the clean cut one of like between his Friends and Seinfeld. And I never even watched Friends, but I believe that Seinfeld was the more like
the better show.
Yeah, well, for sure, but
the better show.
But also just like I think Seinfeld was clean on stage for the most part.
That was his whole thing. Yeah.
That reputation, I think, carried into the show.
And that was interesting because, like, the episode wasn't that bad. It was the episode, for those of you listening who've seen it, it's the one where Elaine is in the bathroom and they're out of toilet paper.
Square.
Yeah. And so you've seen a lot of them.
But I there are people that can put me to shame, though.
Spare square. Yeah. And she's like, just one ply, just one. And I was, like, dying on the couch, and they were like, this is grotesque.
That's pretty innocent, though.
Yeah.
That whole scene. That's not that bad.
Yeah.
And then she recognizes her voice later, right?
Yeah. It's because they were in the bathroom, though, talking to one another that they were like,
crazy.
This is toilet humor.
That's wild.
So for you obviously, like you said, you weren't allowed to watch the show Seinfeld. Were you like sneaking down to like watch like comics on late night, or like how did you like get into like stand up itself?
So when around that same age when I wasn't allowed to watch the show, my parents had a cassette of Seinfeld stand up, and we played
because
it in the
that's
car.
super clean. Yeah,
they liked him. Although I remember distinctly he had a bit about how the women's orgasm is like a myth kind of thing, and like it's like where is it? I forget exactly, but as soon as that came on, they're like, oh, next track.
Fast forward. Yeah.
But so there was that, and there was the Chris Rock in high school. One of my classmates told me about one of Chris Rock's bits, the N-words versus black people bit, and this kid was like obsessed. So
it's a great bit.
Yeah,
still holds up.
So that was like my first like
introduction,
memorizing almost every word.
I see what you did there.
Joke that I've heard, and then that was just like the seed was planted, and then I'm trying to think. In college, then in college I studied abroad, didn't really like do much.
Where did you study?
Outside Amsterdam,
okay.
Rotterdam.
What is it called?
Rotterdam is the name of
Rotterdam. Yeah, of course, Rotterdam. Everyone knows. Come on.
So I didn't like go to much class, didn't really immerse myself in the culture, and illegal streaming was just starting to become
LimeWire, yeah.
That, but like how like online you can like kind of get episodes of shit.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was that, and I discovered. So I was like, I'm gonna watch Seinfeld.
Yeah, because to your point, because we're the same age.
Yeah.
I remember I used to get Netflix DVDs. And then I remember being in college, and that's when the streaming first, not even legal or illegal, but that's when like streaming content first started happening.
Yeah.
And BitTorrents, and people were like, oh, just rip it, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But mine, I was always
forgot about that era.
Yeah, I was nervous about doing I didn't even understand what a torrent is. I still don't.
Me neither.
But I would just find it where it was posted online, and I could just watch it online.
Yeah.
But it wasn't through any provider. It was just like some random.
There
were no providers at this point.
Yeah.
So I was only stealing it because I had no other options.
I remember the show Burn Notice I'm obsessed with.
Oh, okay.
It's a weird thing. I don't know why it took to me, but I'm like obsessed with that show. But I remember a friend of mine in college, Sean Michael Murphy, shout out to the pirate. He showed it to me. We were roommates. And he was like, dude, this show is so cool. It takes place in Miami. I went to college in South Florida, so it was relatively close. He's like, it's all about this fucking guy who was a spy, and then the government turns on him, and now he's like doing all this spy shit just as a civilian.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that show, but he was downloading the episodes on like LimeWire. So you'd see like the pilot, then you would see like season 1, episode 5, and then season 2, episode 3. So there was only like 4 episodes that we had.
Yeah.
And we were trying to like piece them together to watch them because they wouldn't actually tell you what episode it was. So you'd have to play that fun game of like, well, where is the story
like
at? Does this come before or after this one? God, so I completely forgot about that era of like watching it that way.
Yeah.
And then you used to buy like, this is before Netflix was streaming, and you'd buy like DVD season packs of shows and stuff like that. Yeah.
So that's I remember when I was studying, there was some market they had probably bootleg versions of the best. Remember the best of like Chris Farley or whatever on DVD. So I would watch that, then I ran through all those, and then I got to Seinfeld when I was studying abroad, and that was, and then I, for whatever reason, I had nothing. All I was doing was smoking weed like the entire time.
Yeah.
So then I went down a rabbit hole, and like I somehow discovered Larry David's name, and I had always heard of Curb Your Enthusiasm. So I had more time. I watched Curb Your Enthusiasm, and that was the seed where I was like, oh, because like up to that point, Chris Rock and Seinfeld, like they were funny, but they weren't the way I thought. Per se.
Exactly.
Larry David was the first where I was like, oh, I had the same exact type of ideas.
Yeah.
And that's when I started keeping track of the ideas. I was like 21. But I didn't do anything with them for.
It is weird how, as comics, there's that person.
Yeah.
Like for you, it was Larry David. For me, it was Dane Cook. There's plenty of people I talked to where it was Chris Rock or what, where they're like, this person thought a lot of the same way I did at that moment in time. And that's what triggered to be like, oh, I could probably do something like this.
Right.
Or at least write it down to keep track of it.
What you see is not that far of a reach.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, like when I was watching Mitch Hedberg and Greg Giraldo, I loved it, but I was like, oh, these guys are like, I couldn't. My brain doesn't even work that way.
Yes, exactly.
And then and then you see someone you relate to, and you're like, oh, my brain does work that way, though.
Yeah, exactly.
That I can fathom.
Yes.
I can imagine. So what happened? So you're writing all this down at 21.
So I just saw he had a notebook that he would carry around every day, and I was like, all right, well, the first step is keeping track of these ideas that I have.
Yeah.
So I just started writing it down on my phone in like a notepad, and I still have all those ideas going back to like when I was 21 years old.
God,
it's all garbage.
It's all.
But it was just
that joke book right there is from 2009. It's the worst joke book in the world. It's fucking terrible.
It's the exercise though, that like in the discipline. So started doing that, and then I didn't do anything with it. I talked to a few people about one. Oh, I remember actually I outlined a few episodes of Seinfeld because I didn't have a job when I graduated.
Yeah.
2010, like the
market crashed,
or disaster. So I didn't
disgusting.
have a job.
Also, yeah, you could have gone with that one.
But I didn't have a job, so I just was like, all right, I'm gonna I have time. I'm gonna start.
Where did you go to college?
University of Richmond.
Okay, in Virginia.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
So did you move back home when you were done?
Yeah, I was living on Long Island for that
Okay.
summer. And I outlined an episode or two of Seinfeld, and I was just trying to figure out how they did what they did.
Yeah.
Like in terms of weaving
That's
everything
smart,
together and seeing how the different storylines
Because
went.
every episode is like 3 different episodes.
Exactly. Yeah. So I started paying attention to that, and then I think I wrote my own episode, outlined my own episode of original, but a spec script type of thing. And then I put it aside. I got a job. Didn't think about comedy. Well, I didn't really think about comedy again for another 5 years.
Okay.
And then I was about to go to business school. I worked at Blackstone, this finance company.
Okay.
And
Yeah, those are the ones that are buying up all the real estate and stuff, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
To be honest, I know they had announced that they were going to be doing it when I was there.
You backpedaled real hard. You were like,
No, they
I
are.
know they announced that they were gonna.
I had no part of it. They announced that they were going to start buying single family homes right around the time I was leaving, and I was like, I do not stand for this.
Yeah.
No.
I'm out of here.
I almost got fired. But
What was your major in?
finance and leadership studies.
Okay.
So anyway,
So you're living on Long Island.
at this point I got the job.
Got the
was
job.
working
you
here,
moved,
living
yeah.
in the city for 5
Put
years.
comedy on hold for a few years.
Right at this point, I was like, I didn't think it was actually something I was ever
Yeah.
going to do, and then I almost got fired. Was trying to move within the company to do more investing shit, and then I was like, I'm going to go to business school, and I applied, got in, put down my deposit, and then that's when comedy came back around.
Really?
And I was like, fuck, if I go, it's over.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be
That's
able to
such
do comedy.
that's such a cool moment to have in your life, though, to be like,
Yeah.
okay, this is I have to choose now.
Yeah, it was truly I need to.
Where were you gonna go to business school?
UVA.
Okay, so you were gonna go back to Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which, yeah. And
you were gonna be a Cavalier, baby.
Yeah, I mean that was always my dream school. I went to Richmond almost as a compromise
Safety
because
school,
I couldn't
yeah.
get into UVA.
The Spiders, right?
Yeah, and then so I was about to go to the school that I always dreamed of going to
As
and
a
then-
grad student, getting
Yeah.
a master's in business.
Yeah,
And you were like-
that was it. Well, I was like,
I'd rather talk about my dick, actually.
I had in my mind I was like, it's not over. I could this was what I told myself and my parents especially. I was like,
God, you had to convince your parents.
it wasn't really a convince. It was just kind of. I mean, at the end of the day, that it was a moment a moment where I was like, I make this isn't my decision.
Yeah.
This isn't anybody else's decision.
Yeah,
anymore.
this is the Varsity Blues.
Yeah.
Playing football at West Canaan is your life. I don't want your life.
I've never seen the show, but
It's a movie. It's
based
one of
on-
the greatest movies of all
Oh,
time.
I've seen Friday Night Lights, the movie.
Yeah, no. So there's Friday Night Lights, but Varsity Blues was the one that
Oh,
came out
sorry.
before it.
Yes. I never saw that.
1999.
No.
Billy Bob. What?
I know that line, and that's about it.
Yeah.
That's all I need to know.
James Vanderbeek, Heartthrob.
So that was a movie.
Yeah. So there's two major football. Well, there's three. There's Remember the Titans for
Yes,
our generation.
sure.
Remember the Titans, Varsity Blues, and Friday Night
yes.
Lights. They came out. It was Varsity Blues, then Remember the Titans, then Friday Night Lights. As far as chronologically.
Okay.
But Varsity Blues was like the fun party. This
Yeah.
is high school football. We're all just drunk playing games and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And then obviously, Remember the Titans is a lot more serious
Yeah.
and bringing people together and stuff.
Yeah.
And then Friday Night Lights is kind of like an amalgamation of both.
Yeah.
Even though Friday Night Lights is the one that was most based in truth as far as the movie.
Yeah.
Because the guy who wrote the movie actually spent an entire season with the Permian Panthers.
Yeah.
But yeah, that Varsity Blues, there's as dumb as that movie is, that's so many truthful things.
Yeah.
Playing football at West Canaan was,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
what you
yeah.
said. You called up mom and dad and you said, listen, going to finance school at Virginia was your life, and I don't want your life.
It's pretty much, yeah. I mean, it was so yeah, it's kind of that, but it was also like, hey, I'm not saying I'm never going to have your life. It's just, I want to see how this goes. And I could always go back to business school.
Well, and
that was always the myth.
It's an interesting thing because, and we know this from doing it, being in entertainment. Now, we don't put a salary cap on people's lives, do you? But it's a lot easier to go to business school at 42 than it is to get into stand-up comedy at 42.
Oh, for sure.
So, like, it is a thing where, like, if you're at the crossroads and you're like, I should do this, but I want to do that, probably do the thing that's a little bit harder to do when you're older first.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, in my mind, it wasn't even – it was over if I went to business school. I was like, I knew I was most likely going to end up conveniently meeting my soulmate in college or in business school, and
someone you'd at least settle for. Yeah,
that's what I mean. And get married, have kids, have like $200K of debt, and that's
and it's over.
Like, that wouldn't be the time to start doing business or comedy. So, I
mean, but we've seen it. We've seen it, but you're absolutely right. That wouldn't be the time. But we've been to plenty of mics where people show up and they're like. You're like, how long have you been doing comedy? They're like 6 months. You're like, how old are you?
And go home to your kids.
Like I'm 40, and then they get on stage. They're like, yeah, I just got a divorce. And you're like, that checks out. That makes a lot more sense now. So, I love this part because we'll get into some of the drinking stories. And don't worry, listeners, I'm keeping track. We're only 20 minutes in. What happens? What's the moment? You said you paid the deposit. Are you? Because I love these little details. Are you in Virginia? Like, are you at school? Like,
no, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm like working.
Are you like packing your stuff up? Like, what happens exactly when you're like, oh, I'm not doing this?
So when you go to business school, you have to ask people to write recommendation letters for you that you're working with. So it wasn't a secret that I was going to be leaving the company.
Yeah.
And so I got in, had all those recs and all that, and then I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go to school anymore. And then I like expressed that to some people I'm working with, and they're like,
oh yeah, because they're anticipating you leaving.
Yeah, they're like, we were kind of thinking about replacing, like what's going to happen. And I was like biding myself some time.
Surprise.
And my parents were like, oh, here's one thing. They wanted me to put down, there was 2 deposits you had to put down. The first one is like whatever, $2K or something. And then the second one was like $1,500 or something. And my parents are like, we'll pay the second one. We just want to buy you some more time to think about it.
Yeah.
And
so you paid the $2K and then your parents paid the second one.
I paid for the first one, and then the second one, I think I might have put down. I forget. But my parents are like, "We'll pay you back."
Got it. Yeah.
But then it was a moment where I was like,
they just wanted to buy you some more time.
Yes. You ever seen It's a Wonderful Life?
Of course.
So when Potter offers Bailey like a deal where he's like, I'll buy the company, blah, 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 and like he's thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And then George Bailey's like, so Potter's like, Bailey asked, can I go home and talk about it with my wife?
With the wife.
And Potter's like, yeah, sure. It would take as much time as you need. And then Bailey's like, you know what? No, I don't need to talk to my wife, and I don't need another day. I don't need another week. I know right now, and the answer is no, and that's it. And that's like that scene played over my mind.
Yeah.
Every time, every time I was trying to decide what I was going to do, and I'm like, that's it. Like I know it's.
You're
over.
like, yeah, I don't need any more time. Like I've decided this is what I'm going to do.
So that was it. I ripped up the check, and I was like, I never want to. And
throw it in the air.
And that was it. And then
music starts playing in the background. You throw on some sunglasses and a leather jacket.
I'm gonna go bomb at some open mics.
Yeah. So what happens from there?
So I was like,
because you're
living
thinking about the city at this point.
Yeah, I'm living in the city, and I was gonna stay at Blackstone, and then I realized
we replaced you, man.
I'd taken 2 improv classes. That's what made me. Because I was having this panic moment, and my mom's like, why don't you just take an improv class, see if you even like it?
Because they knew, that.
So I took one. That's when I was like, I don't know if I want to go to business school.
Yeah.
And to their credit, I was deciding not to go to business school and pursue comedy based on an 8-week improv class. Yeah. So it's like you should do more of it to decide if this is really your life for you. But it was also one of those things where you just know.
Yeah.
So then I was like,
what happened at Blackstone?
So I was like, I don't think I couldn't consistently get out of work by 6:30.
Yeah.
To go to this class once a week.
And you also had to take your stand on the housing crisis.
Wait, what?
You had to take the stand on the housing crisis. You're like, you guys, I'm out of here.
Cease and desist. I'm done. So I was like, fuck this. I'm not gonna stay in a job that like I'm gonna be working till like 9 o'clock every week or every day of the week and like hope to get to a mic. So that was it, or get to a class. So I left and I was like, I'll get a job that's more of a 9 to 5, and that's it. And I traveled for like a month and a half. Came back, got a job at like a campaign for New York City mayor, just doing like accounting work for them. And then I ended up getting a job.
And this whole time, are you doing stand up?
So no, I was doing improv. So I did a couple classes before I quit Blackstone, and then I did improv for like a year and a half. And then, but I knew I wanted to try stand up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know this. I realized. Sorry, I forgot the original question.
No.
Stand up.
Yeah.
But and then I knew I wanted to try
Improv
stand
is
up.
the stand up for a lot of people that I've had
Yeah,
on the show.
it's the
Because stand up is obviously better than improv. So people try improv and then they go to stand up.
Yeah, and I was like, I want to be able to express my own point of view and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I did a couple mics in 2017. I quit Blackstone in the summer of 2016.
Okay.
So basically, I did my
That's
first.
why you said you did a couple mics before, but you didn't really
Yeah.
get into it until 2018.
Right. So then 2017, May of 2017, I did my first mic. I did maybe one every month or two.
How'd you do on the first one?
Oh, I ate shit.
Yeah. Oh, did you?
It was at the pit, the old pit basement.
Did you hit him with the "this is my first time doing stand up"?
I don't think I did. I didn't want to get like the sympathy like bullshit. No one was gonna give me that anyway.
Yeah.
It was like 5 guys who were like miserable and didn't want to be there. But
It is weird, the dichotomy of the different mics.
Oh,
like
yeah.
there's some mics you go to and it's like the cool kids
Yeah.
who like, post a couple of thirst traps and now they have a few thousand followers and they're still at mics, but they won't laugh at anything anybody does. And then when they go up, they're like, why aren't you laughing at me? Not saying that voice is indicative of who I'm talking about. But then there's also the mics where like, and these are the mics I try to go to, like the New Joke Wednesday that Julie Kastner does, or like the one in the 3 on Wednesday that Drew Tessier does, like where there's a bunch of us and we're all super supportive and we're like, oh, this is a fucking good time.
Yeah.
So it's weird that you're like, my first mic, it was 5 dudes and they wanted to fucking kill
Yeah,
themselves.
no one wanted to be there. To be fair, I did 5 minutes on how I don't like exchanging gifts.
Okay.
And that was the only topic. I was
Hot takes coming out of Dillon Krause.
I was extremely long-winded. No editing whatsoever. And so they didn't I think I might have gotten like one chuckle on something, and that was basically it.
But you were like, I'm doing this. I'm in.
But not at that point. I did a few, and I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then I did the Comedy Cellar class with Rick Crom in the beginning of 2018. And that class show, it was when I like first really started getting laughs.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back, I was pretty much bombing, but like it was
still,
the first time
for
I
us,
was really,
yeah.
And
And it's very difficult. I say this all the time for a lot of my guests. You are trying to elicit a human response using just your words.
Yeah.
It's fucking hard, man.
Yeah.
So like to even get a couple of chuckles, you're like, oh, I'm doing it. Like
yeah,
I'm doing
for
it.
sure. Yeah. And especially at a class show, they're being supportive, and there's a lot of people. So if you get a laugh, it's like a wave of laughter that you've never experienced before.
Fuck
because
yeah.
you've just been at mics. So that was where I was like, holy crap, I'm doing this. And
Awesome, man. And now here we are.
Yeah.
Loving it. We're making posts. We're posting things online. So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I assume you got into drinking and partying and stuff like that late, but then you also mentioned you smoked weed a lot when you were abroad. But we talked about a little bit of a stricter household. When was the first time that you actually drank?
I was 13 or 14. I think I was 14. One of my best friend's dads had his job transferred to London, and my mom and I went over and visited. And
In London.
And
Cheerio. Hey, Pippa Ray.
they love it when you do that.
Don't they? Don't they?
And I go to one of my friend's houses, and the parents weren't home, but we took a Malibu and we made a screwdriver.
Oh,
that was my
yeah.
first drink ever.
First drink, the screwdriver. Did you get drunk?
No, I mean we had like one, maybe two, and
Okay.
you feel, and it's also It's not.
It's like
real.
It's not real booze.
Yeah.
It's sugar water. With a little bit of booze in it.
It's not like 80 proof, right?
No,
Like,
Malibu is 40
probably
proof.
like-
It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
20%. Yeah.
So you felt a little buzz, and that was the first time. And then I don't know when I think it was with that friend was the guy I would drink with.
So
like,
bad influence.
I think it was
some
a
would say.
mutual thing. Like we were both like trouble.
No, I'm kidding. He's a good friend. He's a fun guy. When you're 14, 15, it's fun.
Yeah.
When you're 30 and people tell you have a problem, that's when you're like,
it's not-
maybe this isn't the best person to be hanging out with.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're supposed to be doing when you're 14 years old. Is like stealing beers from your parents.
Of course. So you do this in London. But
Yeah.
does this friend still live in the States? Or is this the friend that's living in London?
He was living in London for 2 years, then he came back.
Okay.
And then when he came back,
So now you're
I'm
like
in high
15,
school.
16, yeah.
And then his parents would go out for dinner and shit. And
Yeah.
we would do the whole calculus of like, what can we take that they wouldn't notice? sort of
Yeah, the
thing.
cordials and stuff. Yeah, the real
yeah.
shitty stuff.
Yeah, I'm puking from like the worst liquor
So
ever.
let's talk. I want to talk about that because this is something that I love to talk about with people. So in that 2 year break or that year and a half or whatever, you go to London, you steal a couple Malibus, and then you come home. Or do you drink any time in between? He gets back.
No, I don't think so.
You put it on the proverbial shelf, and you're just like, I'm out. I'm not.
Well,
or did you just
at
not
that
think
age,
about
you're
it?
not thinking
Yeah.
about like your drinking habits.
Yeah,
It's just like
you just want to play video games. Yeah,
yeah.
I
No
got
one's
you.
like 14 years old. Like I'm gonna go a year sober just to see what it's like. It's just
I want to be like one of these like what do they call it? Sober curious people, just to see what my life is like.
let's see if my productivity goes up.
So then he comes back.
So it wasn't only. I think I had a couple friends in the neighborhood that I might have been drinking at this time.
Yeah.
A little bit too.
When was the first time that you can remember where you're like, oh, this is like the room is spinning, like I'm messed up?
The London friend, my parents went away. We had a babysitter, and he slept over, and I puked in the basement of my house. Like I think I got up in the middle of the night and puked.
Yeah.
And I like just played dumb, like I don't know, like. And then my babysitter's like, "Oh, you must have like, did you eat right?" I don't know how. She must have been dumb because there's no way.
You
she
don't
goes,
reek of booze.
She goes, "Did you eat right before you went to bed?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, well, sometimes you can puke because of that."
Really?
She like handed an excuse up on a platter for me.
That is my favorite thing in the world when I was drinking, where people would be like, "Oh yeah, there is something going around. Maybe you got that."
Yes,
and you're like,
yes.
I
have
absolutely got that. Of course it was that.
But it was like I don't think she was trying to help. I think she was just dumb.
Yeah.
And I just seized on that opportunity.
Well,
It's
because
like,
also
yeah.
people don't think. A lot of people, especially simpler people, don't think because I'm a skeptic. I always think the worst in like almost everybody at all times.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, because people are fucking terrible creatures. My buddy Zach Bennett has a great bit about it where he goes, "People make terrible human beings," and it's like, yeah. Absolutely. But I'm always skeptical. So people who aren't like that, they don't even have to be optimistic, just neutral. They assume that you're not bullshit, like you're not trying to lie. So they will do things like that. Like, oh, like if I call into work, especially when I was drinking, they don't even, their first instinct is not, oh, he's hammered again. It's, oh, there has been something going around at work. So yeah, take the night. And you're like, you fucking idiots. What about me has said I'm actually sick and not just drunk?
They could have helped
mind.
you so much earlier if they were smarter.
Yeah, if they were just like, no, if you don't come in, you're fired. And if you come in drunk, you're fired. I would have gotten sober years before. So that happens. And then what happens, because you then talk about getting into weed in college, was that something that you guys also tried? You and your London buddy, or was that high school, or when was that?
Towards the end of high school, I think, was my senior year. Because my senior year, I went to a Catholic all-boys high school.
Yeah.
And it was like a half-hour drive from my house. So it was in a different, it's like closer to the city. It was in Nassau County on Long Island. And I was in Suffolk. And so I didn't really hang out with many kids from my high school. And the kids I hung out with more in high school were my neighborhood friends who all went to a different high school, and they were like a year younger than me. So I was like a late bloomer socially, because I only started going to parties when they were juniors.
That's
and
what
I
I
was
wanted
a senior.
to ask. So a lot of the parties you were going to were, or all the parties you were going to were unaffiliated with your high school at all. It was their high school.
I didn't really go to exactly.
And
it wasn't until
neighborhood
senior
kids.
year.
Yeah,
I wasn't going really to parties.
So you're a
sophomore.
senior. You have all these friends that are now juniors, and now they're going to parties. So you're going with them.
And one of my two of my best friends transferred to the public school.
Yeah,
and that they were the partiers. So that was like, oh, we're doing
it
parties
now.
Yeah. It was like we were invited to shit. People were like welcoming,
awesome.
and like it was just a cooler environment.
Did you play sports and stuff in high school?
Not for a lack of trying.
Okay.
No. A lot of cuts.
Really?
Yeah, well, I don't know. My excuse, or the excuse that my parents gave me, was it's a competitive high school, and it's like, Catholic all boys, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, I just didn't know you had to practice.
Yeah.
I just was
and also those schools, they can
go.
be selective because they're so small.
Yeah.
Like I come from Florida where the Catholic schools were like 2A. I went to a school that was 8A. it had 3,500 kids.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was a small city.
Wow,
So it's like
yeah.
one of those things where when you go to a school like that, the rosters are all inflated because
Right, they have budgets.
Yeah,
for shit.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but at the Catholic school, I remember Calvary Christian. I don't even think it's there anymore. That was this. It was literally the Catholic school, but it was like right next to my neighborhood. Like literally, I would drive past it, going to and from school every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember they were 2A, and I was like, how many kids does that even mean? They had 22 total kids for the football team. It was 22 kids.
What the,
That was it.
that's not even
That's exactly.
That's
it's
insane.
It's not offense, defense, and special teams. Like everyone had to play both ways and stuff.
Right.
But that's because it's such a small school. They had like no budget and stuff like that, and they could be like super selective. The school I went to, my junior year, we went super deep in the playoffs. So my senior year, we had like 230 kids try out,
Jesus Christ.
and then obviously we didn't have to make cuts. Like my coach didn't believe in cuts, but also people quit pretty frequently.
Oh yeah, like
it's fucking hard.
It's like what you were saying about the waking up for
for practice.
It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yeah,
There's
eventually
so
it's like,
many
I'm not
people where they're like,
playing.
yeah, I'm
What am I
not even
doing?
going to play.
Yeah.
What's the point? Especially if you got into it late. Like I played all 4 years in high school. So by the time I was a senior, I was definitely like, I was I was on
Yeah.
varsity as a sophomore. So I was like, I wasn't starting, but I was still on. So I was like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm
that's a big deal.
definitely playing.
Right,
So
right,
like I couldn't quit. I was also planning on going to play college football and
Right,
stuff.
get
So
a
it's like,
scholarship,
I'm
yeah.
there. But if you come on because we had a good season as a junior and then you come on the team as a senior,
Yeah.
the fuck are you doing, man?
Well, at that point, it's like joining a fraternity.
Yeah, it's
you know,
well,
you're
who
just
does
hanging.
that their senior year? It's like,
Yeah,
but also I get your point. Yeah, you get
Which
to
is
be
like
a part of the
yeah.
team. Yeah. So for you, you're not really playing any sports. So are you raging out at these parties and stuff?
Kind of. Yeah.
Like,
but,
are you-
But so are the athletes. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
But what I'm more public school athletes are fucking animals. I went to a public school. They're fucking. I was bullied a lot. Didn't have a lot of friends, so I didn't go to parties. But some of my teammates were fucking savages.
Oh yeah.
So, but what I mean is like, was there any significant point as a high schooler where you were like getting into any like actual trouble, like getting caught drinking or like getting busted by parents or anything like that, or was
We
it
got
more
busted
mellow?
here and there. Like my next door neighbor would have some parties, and like her dad, her mom passed away when she was younger. So her dad was dating somebody. They went into the city. So he and his girlfriend came back earlier than they were supposed to. And
I
they
hate
caught
that.
us. And
I have a
oh
bit
no,
about
sorry.
that.
You know what? I might be wrong. I think their dad was away. And
Girlfriend came back.
the girlfriend was also the nanny. It was yeah.
I've seen that documentary before.
And she came back with her friend or whatever, and she caught us, and it was the whole really disappointed in you, blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
yeah.
And then there was another time where what I described did
Yeah.
happen. They came back early from the city. They blew out the party. I didn't want them to see me. This isn't that great of a story, but there was like a small, probably like 2.5 foot wall around both of our houses.
Yeah.
And I like jump. It's kind of hard to explain, but I jumped basically down a flight of stairs to avoid her dad seeing me.
Really?
And yeah, and
You
then
like splinter celled it.
yeah, it was pretty like because there was like this long staircase coming out of her living room onto like the driveway.
Yeah.
And I just hopped over the side of the staircase, basically.
Just straight fall.
Straight fall, and then I ran down her driveway to go into my backyard.
Yeah.
And I was running, and I tried to jump over the wall, and I clipped my foot, and I just ate shit. But the dad was
Your
like,
dad just walks up and he goes, "This is why you got cut. This right here. Come on now.
sad.
It's 2 feet."
But that was like I got that. Oh, here's one. I was working at the summer club that my family belonged to. That was like
hard flex.
around the corner from my house.
And you know, I love the Krauses. They come to the summer club in Long Island. We love them over there.
it wasn't as bad as that, but it was like a little yuppie.
Not full blown Trumpian.
No, and also I was working as a busboy.
Yeah.
My parents made me work. So they had a summer bash every summer. I think I was a junior maybe, and one of my sister's friends was like interested in me.
Ooh.
And, my parents were away.
Younger?
Younger. So my parents were away. So like there was this whole coordination thing where like my sister was like, oh, like like you could like we'll hang out with you after you were working the summer bash at the club, and like I was thinking I'll drink before to loosen up or whatever, and like talk to this girl.
Look at your sister wingman in you.
Yeah, she did
huge shout out,
lob it up pretty well. And so I'm working this thing, and a few of the busboys and I, it was a great time. We stole like a 36 pack.
Damn.
And threw it in the ice machine in like one of these, like the locker room that no one uses.
That's so smart. Yeah.
Brilliant. And we started pounding beers.
No one thinks to
night.
look in the ice machine.
No, and it was like the locker room, so no one was there. So there was like 6 busboys working for this party. So we just take shifts of like grabbing a beer, and I probably had like 8 or 9, and I'm like 15 or 16 years old at this time.
Like 130 pounds.
Yeah, I was very small. So I've been drinking all night, and then at the end of the night, the manager, who's kind of he's like whatever, he lets us each have a drink. He's like, you guys can each have one drink.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, it'd be cool. Except he didn't know
you weren't hammered.
Yeah, we were already hammered. So I have
It took me a second to put 2 and 2 together.
So
yeah, you're wasted.
He thinks he's doing the responsible thing by saying you can only have one. That's it. So I have a like Grey Goose soda.
Yeah.
And I
because you're
black
fucking
out.
An educated mate. You're an elevated guy.
But it was also like have whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. So I'm at this point blacked out. This is scary actually. One of my coworkers. There was a dock. He jumps off the dock to go into it was a pier, so it was like a probably 15-foot thing.
Oh,
we didn't check to see if it was low tide or high tide.
Yeah,
he jumps, he's fine. So I jump, and I'm fucked up.
Yeah,
and that could have been death. But then I ended up going back up to the I ended up going back up to the restaurant, and then I'm like, they're like, Dillon, you don't look good. Start puking in the garbage can. And then at one point, this is what they told me the next day. They were asking, they're like, Dillon, how many do you have? And I was like, 2. And they're like, 20, too many. And then so my parents were away. This guy, my neighbor was kind of watching over us, and he gets a call. He came pick me up, and like I probably.
What happened with the girl?
Oh, I mean, that was over because I blacked out. I was puking all night. Like I probably had alcohol poisoning.
Yeah, but
oh no, there was no like circle back. It was over. Yeah.
No per your last email kind of a thing.
No.
Sorry, you said circle back. I had to take it. That is a crazy thing in high school where you have these opportunities. Even in college, to an extent, where you have these like Marshall Mathers says it best. You have one shot, one opportunity, and then sometimes it just goes away.
Yeah, I don't know
over.
whatever happened with that, but yeah, that was it.
Now you're like, I wonder, whatever, because I had a lot of those. Not a lot. I shouldn't say a lot, but I had a few of those. I remember I told this story recently on an episode, but I remember this girl I had a crush on in high school. She like came in late, like our senior year. I had the biggest crush on her. And like we were at a party and I did something dumb and ruined that. A girl that I was like in love with in college when I was playing college football, and I was like, I'm not gonna get a girlfriend. Yeah. I remember one night we're trying to like lay down in the twin beds in the dorms. Yeah. And I was like, come on, I know you know how to do this. Like I basically called her a whore, and she just got up and walked out, and I was like, and never again. Like we'd see each other at parties and we were cordial, but like that was it. And that was like those little things, like those little moments just.
Well, that was my perspective, or my theory on myself is that you need to go through a lot. Like, by the way, all yours are you put your foot in your mouth, and there was no. Mine was 100%. Just I got fucked up, and then for whatever reason,
you put a beer in your mouth. Yes. I put a foot in my mouth. You put a beer in your mouth.
But I think you need to kind of go like you learn from each one of those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And going to an all boys Catholic school, you don't have as many of those.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
To fuck up and then learn from it. So I think I'm a late bloomer, like with dating, partially because of that. It kind of like set me back in terms of like learning how to
because all the like I said, I was bullied and I have a lot of friends, but I even I had a girlfriend through I had 2 different girlfriends like in high school that I dated for a pretty substantial, like a year for one and then like over a year for the other, which in high school was like a century. And then after that in college, like, that's where I kind of blossomed and like did all the stuff. And then I got super fat when I stopped playing football and I was a disgusting mess. But to your point, like I had learned from all those experiences. By the time you get to Richmond, you haven't really had a whole lot of any kind of experiences.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried to do this on stage before, but the first girl I hooked up with in college, it was like we had been talking before we even got to school.
Okay.
She like
was she from
Facebook?
Okay.
She.
How did you meet
what?
her?
Facebook. Like I don't know if you remember, but like I don't know if your school did this. They had a Facebook group for everybody in the incoming class.
Okay.
So
I don't know if my school did that, but I remember we're the same age. So when we went to college, Facebook was still for college kids.
Oh, it was the thing to have.
So the only way you could get it is if you had a college account. So you had to have a college email in order to get it.
Until our fucking senior year, and after we got into like our freshman year in college, that's when they stopped that, and I was so pissed because all my sisters came onto Facebook.
I remember. I had
to wait
when I was a freshman because I graduated at 17. So when I was a freshman in college, I was scrambling to get an @fau.edu email address. I was like, where is this address?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yes.
I was like, God, who's that? Christian Bale? No, fuck. What's that? Anyway, I'll think of it. But I was scrambling to get the email address. Mystic River. Where is she?
Yeah. Admit what you did.
But I finally got it, and like 2 months later, it was like, oh, anyone can just join.
So
and I was like, what the fuck, man? So you guys had an incoming group for incoming freshmen, and you met her all online. Never met face to face.
It was like, and this is pre-catfishing, so I wasn't even worried about any of that kind of stuff.
Fuck no.
So we, she like messaged me, we start chatting, and like, it was a lot of chatter, so I'm like, there's definitely interest.
Yeah.
Even I, who went to an all-boys Catholic school, could tell. So we get to
she's
school.
Into me, you guys.
So we get to school.
Quick, call my sister.
We get to school, and she swings by my dorm when my parents are still unpacking.
Just to say hi?
Just to say hi.
Dude, I miss this shit so much.
It was so bold. And so that was that.
The balls on this one.
So we start hooking up, and
hey, just wanted to make sure you're getting settled in.
That was it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know how it goes.
And then we start hooking up, and then this is how the whole point of the story, this is how like illiterate I was with women. Yeah. I start doing the math, and I'm like, I could just tell that like girls, as I'm like starting to see this girl, other girls are just kind of like, keeping me at arm's length and stuff. And I'm like, I didn't like sign up to date this girl for like 4 years. Like, what the fuck am I doing? So when I told her that I think we need to like give it a break, I told her it's like, I like you, but there's just like a plethora of other women at this school. And I can't just be like putting that out of reach. It was like the worst thing. One of the worst things you could tell.
See, people say they like honesty, but then when you're honest with them, you're like, oh, this is probably the worst thing I could have said.
I just didn't know how, I don't even know that's a woman thing. I think that's just like how to talk to women.
General,
I think it's just don't be that blunt.
Yeah.
But,
Well, that's not even just for women. That's in general.
That's what I'm saying.
You would never go into like your boss and be like,
exactly.
Hey, I really think you're a fucking moron with the way you're running this.
Yes. But like for whatever reason, there are sensitivities around dating, not even, gender specific, but it's just like, you don't like, it hurts more when it comes to dating. I guess,
absolutely. Cause there are plenty of times where I've been the person on the other end where I'm like, just be honest. And then when they're honest, you're like, all right, I think I'm going to die now. Cool. that was fun. I hate my life.
Something I could fix. Fuck.
So, cause Richmond's not a huge school. Were you?
No, it's like,
were you partying and stuff?
Yeah. That was a lot of.
Is it a commuter school or a lot of people living on campus?
Most people live on campus.
Okay, cool. So that's fun.
And it's mostly like Northeastern kids that come to Richmond. It's like a private liberal arts, like rich kid school, basically. So yeah, that, and with that in mind, like I think I learned a lot there too because
Todd McShay.
Todd
McShay, big in the sports
that's right.
world.
Yeah,
he played quarterback.
Yeah,
for
he was also a leadership studies major.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where I come from, you don't learn how to be a leader; you just are one.
I took 4 years to learn that. Paid a lot of money. So,
is there a lot of partying and stuff going on? Like,
and that's the demographic. Like, it's a demographic of more
like well-to-do,
judgmental, well-to-do, like prissy type of people.
Yeah.
So you have a way shorter leash. This is my theory on my experience. So like you'd kind of get shunned, a little more easily. So I would make an ass of myself here and there. And I forgot I have a
Yeah,
This is terrible.
shoot it.
One of the stories I forgot to write down for you. So this is like another like typical example. I was at a fraternity party and was probably close to blacked out drunk. I was blacked out drunk because I don't remember this. I was just told this. And
Let's get the record straight.
and this
I have
girl,
no recollection of this whatsoever.
I'm not even sure that this happened, but it's a funny story. So there's this girl that came back. She's just graduated the year before, and I think I'm a freshman, and I just got into this fraternity, and she comes back with her brother.
Oh, so you're in the frat?
I'm in the fraternity.
Okay.
And she comes back with her brother, who's a senior in high school, trying to check out the school. And she's showing him around. So she's at our fraternity party, and I'm walking past her and a couple of the seniors chatting with the brother too.
Yeah.
And
she's probably like 23. She's like old.
Yeah, I mean, to me, yeah, she's
that's
old.
What I'm saying, yeah.
So
You're an incoming freshman. You got to be like barely 18.
Exactly. Yeah. So so it's a young kid and like this old woman who's like showing him around basically to me. So
You old bag.
so I'm walking past this group and she goes, "Oh, don't say that. That's disgusting." And she's saying it to one of the seniors.
Yeah.
Who's like a little bit more rough around the edges. And I'm like, "Wait, what did he say?" She goes, "He said," and he goes, "I said cunt." And I was like, and I turned to her. I go, "You're a cunt." And I just walk away.
What?
Isn't that like that was like
That's
the type of
insane,
shit I know.
Dillon.
That's the type of shit that I was doing when I was like fucked up.
My story about the twin bed is way more cool than that.
But I also, to be fair,
Hinting that a girl is a whore is way nicer than going, "Yeah, you're a cunt."
and then I didn't also. To me, I think at that time I didn't understand the impact of that word. I just was like, "Oh,
Can I be honest
fuck
with
it."
you? I fucking still don't. I say it all the time. I say it to people in my life.
But I didn't know like what I was signing up for in terms
yeah.
of the reaction.
Well,
I was just
especially
like,
back then, that was 15, 16
Yeah.
years ago. People now, I think with the kind of mainstream of comedy and stuff, and with like some of the stuff that's out there now, that word has become more assimilated into the society. But back 15 years ago, if you called somebody a cunt, it was like, "What the fuck did you just say?"
Yeah.
So I wanted to get to, you sent me a bunch of stories. I wanted to get to some of them. Prague. Let's talk about it.
So that was
you are an internationally traveled man.
So yeah, I studied in Rotterdam for the semester, and then the summer before that, I studied in Prague.
Oh wow!
Which is like that. I mean, they're both study abroad is kind of a bullshit, basically like a vacation for kids anyway.
Yeah.
But particularly a summer, it's like a joke.
Yeah.
So absinthe is legal in
Real big over there.
Europe, and we're drinking a lot every night in Prague. And one night, and by the way,
How old are you? What year is
I'm
this?
20 years old at this
So
time.
you're like a sophomore,
I'm
junior?
going into my junior year.
Yeah.
So, peeing in public is legal in Prague.
Okay.
Just as a side note. So,
I have a feeling I know where we're going.
so we're
Also, just real quick, as a 36-year-old sober dude now,
yeah.
this sounds like a fucking nightmare to be around. Like if I was at a bar
Oh my
and
God, yeah.
7 20-year-olds came in and they're just pounding absinthe, I'd be like, I'm going to fucking kill all of you and pee on
Yeah.
your bodies outside because it's legal here.
But if it was the best thing when you are that 17-year-old kid
that
or whatever,
20-year-old,
or
yeah.
20, like it is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So we're drinking so it was in a
Are you drinking all sorts of stuff or just the absinthe?
all sorts of stuff.
Okay,
yeah. And we're staying in like it's not a hostel, but like it's like one of these like long-term like shared
extended
space
stay kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And but they're small. It's like 2 beds to a room, and like you have a shared like little kitchen bathroom situation, and with another room. So we're all drinking in one of these combined units, and there's one bathroom, and I have to pee. So I was like, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna go find another bathroom." And I decide to. So there's this. There's a balcony at every landing on the stairwell, or every floor.
Okay.
And the balcony's overlooking this little courtyard that's like a piece of shit. Like we never went out there the entire time that we were staying there.
I'm kind of piecing this together.
We like never even saw anybody out there.
Yeah.
So I just go to the balcony, start peeing off
I'm
the
just going to
balcony.
pee off the balcony, yeah.
And all of a sudden I look down and there's 2 people sitting in the courtyard, and it's a small courtyard, and I'm 100% peeing on them. And I had no clue. So This wasn't even like I could see myself doing this sober, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, is it not that much related to drinking, but I just happen to
But
be
it's one of
drinking
those
this time.
things where, you're just like, I'm just going to pee off the balcony. And then you start peeing and you're like, oh, fuck.
Totally. So I'm like, fuck, I'm like, heart's racing. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I go all the way down to the basement.
Did you jump?
Does this make
Is
sense?
this high school all over again?
So I go all the way down to the
So
basement.
what happened? Real quick. What is their reaction?
So all of a sudden I hear it screaming in a language I didn't understand.
And you're not in, you have no line of sight. Like,
No,
they
I
can't
see at this
you.
point I could see them.
Yeah.
But
are
like
they
it's-
looking up, like
They're
looking
looking
at you?
up, but like it's dark.
Yeah.
It's not really lit. All they could see is the light coming from each of the windows from
got
the
it.
stairwell. So I'm freaking out. And by the way, this is like a cheap place to stay.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like whoever this is like not like some fancy
They're not.
person.
Yeah.
So
So you're just pissing on
probably
two
rough.
people.
Yeah. So I'm pissing and
Rough around the edges.
So I go down and they're speaking in a language I don't understand. So I go down to the basement. I'm just gonna wait this out.
How many flights are you up?
I'm probably like 4 flights up.
So
now.
you just
I
dead sprint
book it
down to the
all the
basement?
way down to the basement. Sorry, no, I took the elevator. So I take the
So
elevator
you
all the way
run
down.
back inside, get on the elevator,
Go all the way down.
Got it.
And then
I was
I'm
gonna say,
thinking,
because you'd have to run by them if you were going
right
on the
So
stairs.
then I'm like, fuck, if they see that the elevator's in the basement, like on the going up, like because they're gonna come in on the first floor, they're gonna see it coming up, they're gonna know I'm in the basement.
Yeah.
So it's like fuck. So I'm like, all right, I'm just
Real
gonna
Jason
go.
Bourne shit going through your head.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm just gonna go back up to the room and hope that
That the doors don't
Nothing.
open and they're looking at you.
Yeah. So I go back up to my room with everybody else, and I'm like, dude, you'll never believe what just fucking happened. And like everyone's like, I look like I've seen a ghost. And then we hear a knock on the door, and it's the guy who's like running the front desk.
Yeah.
And this dude and his girlfriend, and they come barging in, and I was wearing like a striped blue, like white and blue striped like button down.
Yeah.
And another guy was wearing a similar shirt, and they start like screaming in Russian at us. And I didn't know this at the time, but Russians like Czechs are very prejudiced against Russians because of all the history.
Mm-hmm.
So Russians feel like they're very persecuted in Prague. So this guy is probably thinking it's like personal and like targeted because he's Russian.
He heard you speaking. You heard him speaking Russian. You're
Right.
like, I'm gonna
Fuck these
fucking
Russians.
piss on these Ruskies.
So he's screaming at us, and they're like realizing we're not understanding, and they start like miming this, like the woman, the girlfriend, is like showing her dress, and she's like showing that like she has like liquid on it, and then they start like miming peeing, and they're trying to like communicate. And this one guy sees my friend who's wearing a shirt similar to mine. He like points at him, and he goes up to him and he grabs him by the shirt, and he like has his fist. He's like ready to like knock this guy out. And then he turns to me and he's like, "No, you." And then he comes up to me. And
What's
like,
the
we're all
hotel
just playing-
manager doing?
And he's like trying to break it up. He's like, "Yeah, calm down." And we're all just playing dumb.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. They like left because what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Like their only options are to like beat the shit out of us, but it's a huge group of people at this point.
Yeah.
And
Plus, we're Americans. We won that war.
But
So what ended up happening? Nothing.
that was
ended
it.
up happening?
And then
they just walked
left,
away.
And I forget if I ever confessed. There was really no reason to confess.
Yeah, I
so
was
don't
gonna
think
say. Did you tell all your friends or?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
immediately. Yeah.
You're like, no, I immediately told them. What happened with the basement cake?
Oh God. Okay, so
that-
this is I hope my mom doesn't listen to this.
Do you want to? Well, I've got 4 different ones. If you want to go to
This is I don't know. This is fun. I mean, a lot of this isn't even. I mean, I'm drinking throughout all this.
Yeah.
I around the same time as sophomore, I think in college.
So this was those were your power years.
Yeah, it was my prime.
Yeah.
But it was also my rock bottom. I was talking to this girl that was interested in me. She was friends with one of my friend's sisters who lived around the corner from me. So we're texting.
Your sister just helping you out.
Yeah, like it was. Yeah. Well, it was my friend's sister.
Oh, okay.
No,
I'm
not
sorry.
my sister's
yeah,
friend.
yeah.
So, but like, there's a lot of like brother sister, like scratching each
Yeah, I
other's
got
back.
2 sisters. Yeah.
And although it only worked one way, I would never like set her up with a friend.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I never hooked up with any of my sister's friends, either my older or my young or twin.
You have a twin?
Yeah.
Wow.
But she listens to a lot of this. But she was popular. Everyone in my family was popular except me.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember my twin sister was like friends with a lot of the people at the time you would call like the like snotty kind of cunty, but like girls. Like they were all real well-to-do and all very pretty and all this kind of stuff. And I remember I had crushes on like all of my sister's friends, but I was a big chubby fat kid.
Yeah.
And then I hit my growth spurt, and for like 4 years I was like in my prime, and then I became a big chubby fucking guy, like older guy as an alcoholic. So like the window that I had to hook up with my sister's friends was very brief, and they only knew me as like the fat kid.
Right.
So like
I
never got I never got anywhere with any of them.
I'm sorry,
but
man.
you, totally different ball game because you're the older brother.
Yeah, the older brother, and I think that just comes
running
with a cachet,
through your sister's
like,
friends. Yeah, just,
I wouldn't say that.
Just no, I know. That would be so funny as a clip.
Next,
like, what
next.
the fuck? So it's a friend of your sister.
So it's my friend's sister's friend.
Okay.
Essentially.
Friend's sister's friend. Got it.
So we're chatting, and we're like, I was at this party. We realized we're like, she's staying over my friend's house.
Yeah.
With his sister, and they live around the corner. So we decide we're gonna meet up, and
yeah, you do.
I come back I'm on the way back from the party, and I'm peeing at a pizza place.
This fucking guy.
No, well, actually, yeah, this is relevant. I'm peeing at a pizza place, and I'm texting on my phone. Phone drops in the toilet. Of
course.
It's over. Now I can't contact her.
Oh,
so
and
now,
this is as a sophomore in college. These aren't the phones that we have today that are like waterproof.
Oh,
this
is like,
done.
I need to get a new phone.
Yeah. God, remember those days? You had to be so careful.
Oh, my God, yeah. I still don't, even though they can handle it, I still, well, I mean, I
still don't believe them. I still don't believe them.
Yeah. Oh, no, I've dropped my phone in like a little creek one time, and I picked it up. It was fine.
Yeah.
But
the other thing too is like the dropping of the phone, all this kind of stuff. We had to be so like, even to this day, like if my phone slips out of my hand, it's in an OtterBox. Like they have all this technology now. It's like a titanium case or whatever.
Yeah.
Apple is like, they guarantee it's like shatterproof or whatever now. And I still put all the shit on it, like the OtterBox and the screen protector.
Yeah.
But still to this day, if it slips out of my hand, I'm like, no.
Yeah. It's like PTSD we got.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
So my phone goes in the toilet. Fuck. So then I asked my friend to text my friend's sister or whatever, and for whatever reason, I ended up getting dropped off at a gas station. My friend's sister picks me up with her friend.
Okay.
She
so
drops
you're back in it.
Yeah. So this is a minor detail before. So she drops us off at my house. My mom makes cakes out of my house, like professionally, kind of
Oh,
like
really?
for
Oh,
like
that's cool.
family and friends or whatever referrals. So she's always up late making cakes, and I get home, and my basement.
That's just a weird sentence to be like. It sounds like something coming from like a drug dealer kind of thing. Like, yeah, my mom stays out late. She bakes the cakes, man. And you're like, what does that mean? No, she's really baking cakes. There's a bat mitzvah down the block. It's a whole thing.
So my basement has a separate, a ground entrance. Mm-hmm. It's like my house is on a hill. So I tell this girl to go around the back.
Yeah.
And I go in acting like everything's normal. I'm like, I'm going to go watch a movie in the basement. Go down in the basement. And we start hooking up, and all this is over the course of maybe like half hour or whatever. We start hooking up, and all of a sudden I hear the door open. I'm like, oh my God, I think my mom's coming out. I was like, so tell her to go hide in the corner, like behind the bar.
Yeah.
And she grabs her shit.
Did you have a movie playing?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that would have been. It all would have been over if your mom came down and there was like nothing on the television.
I'm just sitting in like
darkness.
pitch black.
Are you a fucking vampire? I've been waiting for your cakes, mother.
I'm imagining a movie, Mom. So
it's all here.
So she comes down. She's like, all right, I'm going to go to bed. And she's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah. And then she goes, you sure? I'm like, yeah. She's like, is anyone down here? I was like, no. And then I see out of the corner of my eye, there's a condom on the floor, like in a wrapper.
Yeah.
But so I slowly, like as I'm talking to her, just reach my foot over and start slowly sliding it over to me. And so that's covered. And all of a sudden she goes, what is that over there? I'm like, oh, fuck, there's another one. And she goes over and she goes to this bench and she picks up a pocketbook and she's like, whose is this? And I was like, I don't know. She goes, are you sure no one's here? I'm like, yeah, no one's here. What are you talking about? And she goes, and she opens the pocketbook and she takes out the license. She says, I'm not going to say the name.
Yeah.
She says the name of this girl who's in the room, literally listening to all this.
Yeah.
And she goes, who is she? And I'm like, oh, that's one of Margaret's friends, my next door neighbor. I had just gotten caught for having a party when they were away, like the week before.
So you're on thin ice.
So I was on thin ice, but I was also, that's the out. So I go, oh, that's Margaret's friend. She was at the party.
Fucking genius.
She must have left her pocketbook.
God, on the fly.
Dude, I have no
Born,
idea how I
ladies and
figured this
gentlemen.
out. So she goes, all right,
Dude,
whatever.
that's quick. That's crowd work quick right there. Just being like, gaga.
So she goes, oh, okay, whatever. She leaves. And then she goes upstairs, and this girl's like now seeing a ghost. She's like, and I was like, you want to pick up where we left off?
Hey,
and she's
how you
like,
doing?
no, I'm getting the fuck out of her. She left. That was it.
God, so
Yeah.
your mom ruined a hookup.
Yeah, but I mean,
Did you ever,
could have
now,
been so much worse.
coming full circle, did you ever get back with that girl?
I think we might have once. I forget.
God, that's so
Yeah. But that
pressure.
Yeah. I know.
I forget about that because I graduated at 17 and then kind of moved out like immediately.
Oh, wow.
And because like there was a little bit, because like I said, I did have girlfriends and stuff in high school. I wasn't like a eunuch, but
Yeah.
it was weird because like, I remember like my high school sweetheart, we like hooked up a couple times, but like it was at like big parties and stuff. Like by my senior year, I actually had like started to get some friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember, and I was on the football team and stuff. So like I knew people and I knew when they would have parties.
Yeah.
The problem was if I would show up, they would just fucking mercilessly bully me the whole time.
What?
And because they thought it was hilarious. I was like the fucking jester. Have you ever seen Game of Thrones?
Nah.
Oh, so there's like a drunk jester in it. And like
Okay.
his whole goal is to just get like fucking destroyed by King Joffrey. And like that's who I was in high school.
Was that just like a character you assumed essentially?
Yeah,
Like, why-
it was just one of those things where I didn't hit my growth spurt until I was
okay.
much older. And like my dad used to always tell me to stick up for myself, and I would, and then they would just like
Make
I
it
would
worse.
fight back, and then they would just kick the shit out of me worse. So it kind of just stuck.
Huh.
Where I was just like that, because I think the big thing was I could take it, and so they would just
Right.
keep doing it. Because there were a lot of kids on the team and like kids at high school where if they got bullied like severely, like I did, they would like cry and like go to administration and like,
Right.
but like, you know, through everything I went through in my life, my dad, you don't fucking rat. Like you don't ever
Yeah.
rat. Like you don't, like if you need to handle something, you handle it. Like you
Right,
don't
right.
you don't go to the administration, you don't go to the principal's office. Like you fucking handle it. And a lot of it I brought on myself. Like I was searching so much to get people's approval, as we are
Yeah.
now with stand up, but I would like do bits and do impressions and be like, look at me.
Right, right.
And then when they'd be like, that fucking sucks, you're a piece of shit, I'd be like, well, that doesn't feel great.
That's amazing. You still have that in you to do
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
'Cause,
yeah.
Like usually that will get extinguished by.
Yeah, you would think so.
Somebody.
I kind of went the other way though, and I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
I'll show all of you how fucking funny I really am.
Or I would have thought that I feel like a lot of times the bigger personality comes like almost as a defense mechanism.
Yeah,
You know
so
what
a
I mean?
lot of it was I noticed that like if I could get them to laugh and stuff, then they would be nice to me for that little while. And then like I said, by the time I was a senior, all those people had graduated and stuff, so I kind of like fell into just having friends that were
Right.
on the team.
Gotcha.
So, and then when I got to college, and the listeners are sick of hearing this, but I was like, this is not going to happen again. So in college, my freshman year, like I was in
the
an
shit out of
elevator with a couple other football players with a girl that like she was showing me around campus. She was very sweet. She's dead, but her name was Marissa. She was very sweet. And I was brand new to FAU, and so she was showing me around because it was like summer semester. She was like, "Come with us. We know everybody." And I remember we were in the elevator, and a bunch of football players got on there, and they're like, "Man, you don't play football here. We play football here." And this is when bruh was a big thing.
What
saying
was?
bro.
Oh, I don't remember.
Well,
that.
I went to
Probably
school in South
Florida.
Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just like, "Nah, bruh, you don't know what you're talking about, bruh." And then they were just like, "All right, bet." And then they got off the elevator, and I was like, "Oh, I stood up for myself. It worked." So after that, it was like, you know, I was off to the races. But yeah, high school was a crazy time because it was like all the things you're talking about, like having parties and getting caught, which again, I didn't have to worry
Yeah.
about so much, but it was even like hanging out with girlfriends and like kissing on their floor
Yeah.
in their bedroom. And then
Yeah.
hearing the parent walk by because the door had to stay open.
Yeah.
And you're like, ah!
Oh, here's another example to give you context. Like my parents wouldn't let any girls go into my room or
Yeah,
even
I would
upstairs.
assume, yeah.
Like, yeah. So that's the type of, like that's how bad it would have
So
been if
what
my
if-
mom had.
Were girls allowed in the basement?
At night.
So like if you're having a bunch of friends over to watch a movie, are girls allowed in the
Yeah.
basement?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was just a being in the bedroom thing that was kind of like,
Yeah. There was like this
Yeah.
connotation. Like yeah.
God,
yeah.
that's nuts. Yeah,
I
because
know.
and I never, after high school, I never had that issue ever again. Because I graduated high school,
Yeah, that's,
found a place because I took like a semester before I went to college. So I found a place because I didn't know I wanted to go to college. So I found a spot, and I was the only kid because I was like 17 turning 18. I was the only one who had my own apartment. So everyone who stayed and went to the community college, they would all party at my house because I was everyone was living at home except me.
Why did? Oh, I see. Yeah.
Because it would be like if you stayed in Long Island, but right after high school you got your own apartment in Long Island.
Got it.
So when everyone came home to visit, we would party at my house because you didn't have to worry about the parents and stuff.
Was that an intentional thing to get away from your parents and have your own?
Yeah, well,
space?
it was kind of it was a weird thing where like obviously anyone who becomes a comic, it's not an awesome past. It's not fantastic. So
sure.
It was just one of those things where, my dad and I kind of butt heads, and we have a great relationship now, but we butt heads a lot when I was younger because we're very similar. So that doesn't always mesh well.
Sure.
And then my mom's husband at the time, my ex-stepdad, was a monster. So it was like, well, I'm not doing this.
Right.
So I was just like, I'll just get my own place. Like, fuck it.
That probably made you feel like pretty independent.
Oh, incredibly.
Yeah.
We're gonna end it on this, and I might even cut this out because the listeners have heard this story a million times. But when I got you know how in the movies, you're a big movie guy. You know how in the movies where the younger characters always like, oh my God, my mom's gonna kill me, or my dad's gonna kill me, or they get into a tight scrape and they're like, I gotta call my dad. He'll know what to do.
Yeah.
And it's not something against my parents. It's nothing against that. I'm just such an independent person to the point where when I got arrested, I've been arrested 8 times. Every time I got arrested, there's no, I'm not, except for the last 2 because I needed to get bailed out. But the first 4 or 5 times, there's no calls that are made.
Right.
I'm not calling someone to be like, oh my God, you have to get me out of here.
Damn.
Like that just doesn't when I've never been evicted, knock on wood, but when I've almost gotten evicted before, there's no I need help with this.
Right.
I've just been on my own.
Yeah.
There have been times in my life where I've been in incredible lows and I've had to ask for help.
Sure.
And a lot of times it's met with a lot of resistance. So I just stopped asking for it.
Right. Yeah.
Which is why my alcoholism kind of got out of control because I was like, oh, I'm just by myself. I'm just alone.
Yeah.
So it's but to your point, I was super independent from a very young age.
Yeah, that's wild.
I have not lived consistently with a sibling since I was 17.
Wow.
Parents, sibling, nobody. I've just been out here running and gunning, baby.
That's why, I always think about people like you, and I'm like, I am such a bitch.
No, it's just different upbringing.
Yeah, this is
we're in this awesome apartment because my girlfriend also did not pay for college. Her family took care of her, which is why she has the money put away to get stuff.
Sure, it's not even just the money though. It's having the support. You know what I mean?
Well, I have a bit now that I'm working on where it's you need to have 2 types of friends in your life. You need to have the friends that are lawyers and accountants. They can help you with your taxes or help you when you get into a scrape,
right?
With the law. You also need garbage friends like me who can be
Make things disappear.
Well, seriously, dude, this is a true story. 3 times in my life, people have called me to be like, hey, I'm having a real problem with so-and-so. Is there anything you can do to help? All 3 times. And I'm not saying it from a badass standpoint. It's just I know people who make – and I'm not saying anyone got killed, but I grew up in Daytona, so I know a lot of cops. So I'm able to call my friend who's now on the police force and be like, hey, kid, this guy must have a warrant. Come fucking get him. And they'd be like, all right, no problem. Or my ex-girlfriend who was a big pillhead in college would be like she moved in with another ex of mine. I don't know. It was a weird thing, but they ended up becoming super close. They moved in together, and then she stopped paying rent. So they would call me and be like, Brendan, can you fix this? And it's yeah. Dude, even to this day, 6 years sober, people at my restaurant are always like, hey, can you get us drugs? And it's of course I can. Of course I can. But
Didn't lose the numbers.
It's well, and also I've only been in New York. I've only been sober in New York for 3 years, but it's
oh, okay.
You just run into people who know people who know people.
Of course, yeah.
I've lived a very unsheltered life, and for some reasons it's good, and then other reasons it's fucking terrible.
Sure.
When you look at the amount of debt I have, you're like, nah, I would have taken the shelter, bro. Dude, this was so much fun. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Plug everything one more time. Let everyone know where they can find you.
At Dillon Krause, DILLON KRAUSE _ on Instagram.
Beautiful. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. At Brendan T. Comedy on all social media, BrendanTComedy.com, and get your merch at the merch store. We'll talk to y'all next week. Boom.
Thanks.